One critique that's often associated with Richard Dawkins of the kind of reasoning you've been using is that this talk about God and God's role in creating the universe and in the universe is really just replacing one mystery with another mystery, and that it's no different than a pure Big Bang kind of explanation for how everything came about. What is your reaction to that?
Well, if you're referring to the key argument of the God delusion, if you say God's the creator, that's no explanation, because God by definition is more complex than the thing you're explaining. And anyway, if you regard God as creator, you'll have to logically ask who created the creator that created the creator that created, and so on. And so God doesn't exist, end of story. Is that what you're thinking about?
It is.
Well,
well, maybe I should restate that. That's what Richard Dawkins is thinking about.
Yes, that's what he's thinking about. And it rather amazed me. I mean, I was used to getting that from people in Russia, but not people in Oxford, because, well, let's think about it, you see. God is more complex than the thing you're explaining. There are two questions there, really. So let's look at them both briefly, if I may. So God is not an explanation. So when I put it to Dawkins this way, I said, Richard, I pick up a book. It's called The God Delusion. It's about 450 pages long. It's quite complicated. So I ask about its origin. And I discovered its creator was a person called Richard Dawkins. And his mind is infinitely more complex than the book. So I dismissed that explanation on the basis that the explanation is more complex than the thing I'm explaining. You see, what lies behind this is the curious idea that explanations have always got to be simpler in an absolute sense than the thing you're explaining. Now, the reductionistic, methodological reductionism in science is a very important tool of epistemology, of getting to know about things. That is, you split big problems up into little problems. And it's wonderful if you get an explanation of the greater in terms of the lesser. But it's so obvious that you can't always do that, you see, as in the case I've just mentioned. So it seems to me that's a totally trivial objection. Point number two is even more trivial when you think about it. Who created the creator? And it's caught a lot of people out. It's what philosophers call the complex question, which means that it's the kind of question that by its formulation, it closes out the only possible answer that makes sense. Now let me try to explain that to you. Who created X? Now what does that mean as a question? It means that you are assuming that X is created. Who created X? Assumes that X is created. So if you're asking the question, who created God, you're assuming God is created before you start. But what if he isn't? If Richard Dawkins had written a book called The Created God's Delusion, I don't think many people would have bought it. Because we don't need him to tell us that created gods are a delusion. We've known that for centuries. We usually call them idols. You see, the point is the question deludes you into thinking it's a real question about God, but it isn't. It's a question about created gods. And the answer is they are a delusion. But the central claim of the three great monotheistic religions is that God never came to be. He is eternal. He wasn't created, so the question doesn't even apply to him. But there's a sting in the tail, you see. I'm a bit of a lawyer too, I like reversing arguments. So I said to Richard, yes, I said, well, this is not a valid question to pose to me because the God I believe in isn't created. But let's try and reverse the question. You, Richard Dawkins, believe that the universe created you. So who created your creator? I'm still waiting for the answer.
For more information about the Veritas Forum, including additional recordings and a calendar of upcoming events, please visit our website at veritas.org.